Well, welcome to the Crofty Rogues. Yes, you heard it right, the Crofty Rogues, your weekly segment on reviewing Men in Kilts. My name is John Cosgrove. I am still from Ireland. Some would say I'm an accent waiting to happen. The man sitting next to me is not. He is Stephen Quinn.
I'm from Wollongong, Australia, and I'll bet you $15 you rehearsed that line, didn't you?
It came to me in a dream.
In a nightmare. I must say, before we get to Men in Kilts, you look very windswept and interesting.
Well, I was taken aback by your Harrison Tweed.
Harris Tweed. Harrison Tweed was in Indiana Jones.
No, Indiana McTavish.
Oh, my mistake.
Jones was the Welsh version.
Ah,
I was taken aback by your Horace Tweed last week.
yes.
So I decided that I would go to the Celtic Craft wardrobe department
Oh,
and I would take that scarf
Yeah.
and I would French it up a little because this isn't how I'd normally wear a scarf.
excuse me. Universal symbol for. Let's stop for a second. The show is called Men in Kilts. We're here because of the Celtic craft, and yet you want to French it up.
Well, I don't normally
Defend yourself, man.
I don't normally wear tartan. So I thought if I'm going to wear tartan, I'd make it look windswept and interesting. Irish aren't really known for their windswept and interesting looks.
But why French it up? What do you have it?
Look at it. Doesn't it look great? It looks great. It looks je ne sais quoi.
Do you say what?
I don't know. Let's do Men in Kilts.
Okay.
Men in Kilts. Episode 2. Let me set the scene. I'm at home. There I am with my sweetheart on the couch.
Again.
2 kids. And I said,
That was quick.
hey, girls,
I said,
let's watch Men in Kilts. And they're like, oh, what?
what?
That doesn't sound good. I go, trust me, it's good. What are they doing? They're running around Scotland in kilts. What are kilts? I said. They said. I said, wait and see. They said, well, if it's Scotland, is it going to be raining? I go, no, apparently in this show it doesn't rain. What was the first scene? Rain.
Rain.
It was great.
Okay, I'm going to be a television professional here and do some exposition. What we're doing is, we are here on behalf of the Celtic Croft. Fantastic place for all your tartan and other Celtic cultural needs. We're here reviewing the TV show Men in Kilts, which is Sam and Graham from the other TV show Outlander, driving around Scotland in a van.
Not an Outlander.
It is. It's his weekly Outlander gag. Taking in sort of the culture and the environment of Scotland. Last week's debut episode, much to our great pleasure, was food and drink. This week's episode,
We thought it couldn't get better
well, it pretty much did,
because the other thing we really love.
sport. This was all about Celtic sports, in particular Scottish sports.
I was very taken by the Scottish sports. Now, the first scene they had, they were lifting a big, heavy stone. I really didn't see the point in it, but they did it anyway. And I have to look up the guy where they were. They were in Balchwydar.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. They were in Balquhidder, which with, what was his name? Peter Lorre. Not the old actor Peter Lorre, but a guy called Peter Lorre who's a Scottish antiquarian, which means, I think that's...
He's old.
He's a fellow of the Antiquities Society. Here's the thing, though. You've got young Sam, who, let's be honest,
We looked up. He's 40.
he's a bit of a unit,
Yeah.
and he kind of knows he's a bit of a unit in a very endearing kind of way. And Graham, who's 61, I think,
Yes.
and it's the ancient art of lifting a big rock and putting it up on a plinth, which is an even older rock. Here's the thing, though, I thought to myself as I watched it.
Quino, I thought, my sweetheart's not watching this.
As I was alone as I watched it, that Sam knew it was a rainy, muddy, as John said, crappy kind of...
He was wearing a nice kilt, though.
He was in a very nice kilt, and you're looking up what it was, aren't you?
Fill a bag, little kilt.
It was a little kilt. But not beyond the filler bag, he was wearing a jacket that is worth more than my car. And he knew he was going to be picking up that rock, which led me to think they've got wardrobe. Because in the next scene, he's got a different jacket that's worth more than my house. I want that gig.
I thought what you were going to alluding to there, given the rage,
Yes.
was
Well, that wasn't rage.
because they made a bet
Yeah.
that they'd have these great feats of strength, so
Yep.
to speak, and the young fella, 20 years younger, had a bet. The loser skinny dips in the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
I thought what you were going to say was, given that first task, the Purell fella wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah, let's be honest. For ratings purposes, I think it was clear that Sam was going to lose the bet, so that we saw Sam's bare buttocks running 9 miles across a low tide sandbar to get to the ocean. But we've jumped ahead there. After Sam heroically picked up the rock at Balquidder, they moved to Braemar, which is the home of the Heughan Games.
Now, here in Minnesota, we have a neighborhood called Bryn Mawr. That's nothing like that. I'm not a professional.
Outstanding! The guy they met at Braemar was like some official in the Highland Games. Looking at his name, Charlie Murray. Here's a tip for young players. Don't mess with Charlie Murray. He looked like a serious cranky one, didn't he?
Well, he had a face on him like a crucified onion.
Technical term. And there they took part in various sort of...
Well, they were throwing the
Highland games.
hammer.
They were.
They
but
were tossing the log too, but they only focused on tossing the hammer.
They had a professional with them. No. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong guy. What was the guy's name?
Kyle Randall.
Big unit. And
He was 2 units.
he was a block of flats. He had this wonderful phrase. They asked him about touring around, going to all these Highland Games all over the place, and he says, it's a life full of pain and sadness.
Oh, wow. Welcome to Scotland and Ireland. So that was fun. They did
Yes.
that. They threw the hammer.
Yeah.
Old fella beat him.
Yeah, they looked good too. Both of them were there in their kilts and their
Yeah.
singlets. And,
Yeah.
fair play to both of
Apparently,
them.
according to my notes here,
Yes.
Charlie Murray was in a formal kilt in the spirit of Scotland tartan.
You take great notes.
He was really up for it.
He was.
Charlie knew he was going to be on TV.
Yes. And Charlie looked the part, and as I said, not to be trifled with, our Charlie.
Apparently, the sparring is synced. Sorry, my Scots Gaelic is almost as bad as my Irish.
So
Gaelic.
after they leave the Heughan Games, they went to, obviously, if you're in Scotland and you're talking sport, you are going to go to St Andrews and play golf. Here's where I got another little idea in my head. They are both fine specimens of men. I'm not sure, for all his physique,
Physical acumen.
that's one way to put it, I'm not sure our boy Sam is a ball sports player.
No,
Because
he's not.
he-
He doesn't have the coordination.
But he looks fantastic.
Yes.
And I must say,
He is an actor.
looks to a piece of paper. The caddy master, the magnificently named Fraser Riddler, was an absolute hoot. He helped them down the fairway. And
Here's
they had
a
laugh
tip.
and
When
good
you go to Scotland, the great thing about St Andrews
Yes.
is, and I learned this in the show, anybody can play on that course.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
They've been playing golf on it for 500 years.
Well, it's a long course.
I did not see that one going.
No. And then, of course, they finished with St Andrews, which is in Edinburgh, isn't it?
Yes.
Or near Edinburgh.
Yeah, near.
And then they went to Murrayfield, the home of Scottish rugby.
And you are a rugby fan.
I am a rugby fan.
People in Scotland are rugby fans, but they've been very disappointed these many, many, many years.
Well-
However,
They were with Al Kellock and Chris Patterson, famous Scottish rugby players, and they did some skills, some drills, passing and kicking. Another area where I thought, these two are not rugby players. But they had a damn fine time, and the denouement, look it up,
French,
was that Sam was going to lose, so Sam was going to have to get his kit off and go nudie dipping in the
North Atlantic.
North Atlantic. When I do that back home in Australia, it's called fatty dipping, but for him it's skinny dipping. And
But you don't do it in the Atlantic in Australia.
no. Well, on my side of Australia, it's
You've got your own side of Australia.
I do. There's Pacific on one side and the
Very specific.
the Indian Ocean on the other side.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now, what you failed to mention in any of that was the game of shinty.
Yes.
And they said it was like a cross between baseball and lacrosse. In fact, It has got deeper roots than that, and the Irish version is called hurling. And every year, and it's they said it was a practice for battle.
Yes.
And if you've seen a game of shinty or hurling, you would not be surprised that it was a practice for battle. But I will tell you, and this wasn't covered in the show, but last week I was excited about the peat turf. This week I was excited about the shinty, because every year Ireland plays Scotland in a sort of a crossbreed game.
A hybrid game.
I was calling it a crossbreed. I was sticking with the Scottish theme.
Yeah.
Hybrid's more like an American word.
Yeah.
And they play this. Scotland always win, and I think it's because there may be more battles in Scotland than we've had in Ireland.
And they're hard men.
They are. A couple of things that Quino oversaw, but I take better notes than him. You did say windswept and interesting.
I did.
There was more rain in this episode than there had been in previous episodes, which is delightful, because when I think of Scotland, I think of rain.
But once again, it was a bit of a valentine to the landscape.
Oh, absolutely.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
But in the final scene, Graham, when he was watching our young boy Sam and his fine buttocks running into the North Atlantic, muscular dipping, he was wearing a wonderful blanket. Now, I am familiar with that. I've owned one of those blankets.
You've owned a blanket?
My mother, I think, might have owned it.
Was there a cover charge?
But I didn't know what it was called until last night.
Nigel. It was called Nigel.
The Black Watch Modern Campbell Tartan. It's like it's got a really nice green and blue tartan to it. I really like that. Maybe I'll wear something like that next week.
Once again, the show was full of wonderful cultural references, and that's why it's a wonderful link with.
And that's why we're here.
Wonderful link with the Celtic Croft, because it's a great place to go and find all your cultural iconic wares from Scotland,
and Ireland.
I know, but this is particularly about Men in Kilts. I loved, once again, the relationship between Sam and Graham. Graham
it was platonic.
Did that have to be said? Graham is this sort of grizzled veteran who's clearly a striking-looking man, and you're not getting any. No, there's no Sam in you. He's kind of like, I figured it out. This moment, he's like the Highland Hemsworth. Do you know what I mean? Oh. He's like the Scottish version of the Hemsworth boys from Australia. And once again, Men in Kilts, a wonderful episode. It's on the Stars channel. It's on every Sunday evening at 7:30.
I don't know. I tape it.
I got in trouble from one of our younger friends for saying tape it the other day. He said, how old are you?
No, and then you said, hang on, you sound like a broken record.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm more like a bad file transfer.
I feel like we've ended on a down note.
Let's bring it up again. Celtic Croft, kilts-n-stuff.com. All your Scottish needs, and of course you should be inspired by Men in Kilts. But do bear in mind, next week is March, the month of Ireland. And Irish people wear tartan too. I mean, look at me. And back to me. We're the Crofty Rogues. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.